Today we're going to learn about stabilizing motion in After Effects and using the motion tracker to attach a null and objects to moving images. I have started a new project in After Effects and I've loaded these 3 pieces of video. I will put the link to these videos in the description if you want to try it yourself. And I am in the motion tracking workspace. So if we look at this footage, you can just kind of scroll through and see what's happening. This is some handheld footage of some flowers, and you'll notice that it is in HDV 1280 by 720, and it is about 16 seconds long. We also have a giraffe walking across the Sahara, and some vertical video of 2 girls, and you can see that's in 1080 by 1920 instead of 1920 by 1080, because it's vertical. And it was shot in Europe somewhere, it's 25 frames per second. So you have 3 different types of video. If you went to just make a composition, you kind of have to figure out which of these presets should I use and that kind of thing. You don't have to do it like that. So we've used this before as the Create New Composition button. This time we're just going to take our piece of video and drag and drop it on the Make New Composition button, and it will make the perfect composition that is exactly the right size and is as long as the piece of video that we have. Now don't get confused. Notice that that is a composition and that is a piece of video. You can probably tell because it says .mpeg4 next to it. So we now have a piece of video, and if we watch it by hitting the space bar, you can see that it's not the greatest footage in the world. Now I'm going to show you how to do this the hard way, and then I'll show you how to do it the easy way. One of the reasons you want to do it the hard way is it will help you understand motion tracking, and also sometimes the AI does not do a good job and you may want to do it the hard way, or you may want to get a certain effect. So we're going to go to the beginning of the timeline, and I'm going to click up here on Tracker, and you can see it's got various different choices. We will be going over all of these eventually. We're going to click on Stabilize Motion. And you will see it's added this little track point. So what we need to do is kind of scroll through here and find something that is on the screen the entire time. Now, you might think, I want to put it on one of these flowers. Well, that doesn't make sense. I'll actually show you what it looks like if you do that. The flowers would be moving. They would be blowing in the wind. But would the ground be moving? No, the ground does not move unless we have an earthquake. Would the fence be moving? No, the fence is just sitting there. So I've already looked through this, and I can tell you that this little spot right here is a good place to track. So one of the things you need to look for tracking is something that does not leave the screen, that doesn't have another object that goes in front of it, and has high contrast. So this little rock or piece of leaf is the best thing that I think we should try. So you're going to zoom in a little bit, just scroll your mouse, and of course remember, if you hit spacebar, you get the hand tool. You can move things around. When you grab the track point, you have to grab kind of between the 2, and let's move it down here. Now, the outside box is the area that it is going to look for this in. You might think, well, I'll just make this huge. Your computer can't handle that, and you won't actually get a good track. So just give it a kind of generic area right around it, and then we need to tell it, this is the thing that we want you to be on the lookout for. And it needs to be something that I said is high contrast. And I've already tried this. This one works pretty well. So we're going to track that thing right there. Make sure you're at the beginning of the timeline. And then we're going to click this button right here, which is to Analyze Forward. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit that button again to stop it so you can see what's happening. Do you see all of these little points that it's made? That is actually how much that object is moving around on the screen. It's moving around quite a bit. If we go down to our composition and we hit U, which remember U will show us anything that has keyframes. Do you see all the keyframes that After Effects has created for us? So Feature Center is the box in the middle, so it's telling us that it's moving that little box all around for us. Confidence is exactly what it sounds like. How confident is it that it is getting the right thing? And then the attach point is the actual little dot right in the middle. That is the attach point. So that's what it's doing. Let's let it keep doing it. Now I will say, when I am hitting the button, I like to kind of make it stop every once in a while, because on really complex things, let me stop it. On really complex things, it'll get lost and it'll fly off the screen. So I like to do it kind of in batches just because I think that helps it. Now, if ever it gets stuck and it really gets lost, say something goes in front of it and it can't figure out what's going on, you can have it analyze it one frame at a time. So if your computer is having a hard time staying on it, sometimes you just go one frame at a time to let it think a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and let this finish. Now that it's analyzed everything and gotten all the keyframes, you have to remember to click apply. A lot of people forget to hit apply. When we hit apply, it's going to ask, do you want us to do this to the X and Y coordinates? Say yes, okay. And now let's play this and see what it has done. You can see that it did all kind of movements and crazy stuff to keep that one little piece exactly where it is. And it did a good job. That is not moving at all. Now the problem is we've got all of this kind of stuff going on. So we can fix that with scale and a little bit of position. So I'm going to go to kind of where it gets the worst. That's pretty bad right there. And I'm going to hit S for scale. Scale it up some. I'm going to hit P for position. And that might have fixed it. Let's see. Oh, now we got a little problem right there. Let me move the position down. Okay, so I have done it now, and it's looking a lot better than that handheld we had at the beginning. Now, I had to zoom in a decent amount. Thankfully, this is HD footage. It's not the best solution in the world. Let me try it again and show you what different things we can do. So this time I'm going to go ahead and grab our original again, and I'm going to drag and make a second composition because I'm going to try it differently. If you've ever seen footage of somebody that has a GoPro camera attached to like a helmet, and it looks very strange because their head is not moving around, everything behind them is moving. That's what would happen if you were to put the track point on the actual flower, and you might want to do that. Let me show you what happens if you do that. Let's choose this flower. I'm going to go over here between these two things. Once again, you want high contrast. And I'm going to say, just kind of get this area right here that's between these two things and look in this general area. Let's see what happens. Okay, it did a good job keeping up with that little spot. That was a good place to choose. I'm going to hit U. I did this on purpose. You see we had a problem. What happened is I had my playhead in the middle when I chose that track point. So when I clicked the button, it only went from there on. This happens a lot just because we're doing stuff and we forget. It's okay. I'm going to put my mouse back where it was. And in fact, it doesn't have to be exactly where it is. And this time I'm going to tell it to analyze backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, X and Y. And when we look at this, do you see how it looks completely different because it's keeping that right there? It's actually kind of a cool effect. It's moving the background, it's moving everything, but it's keeping that right there solid. So you might want that effect. I just did that to show you that that's not the natural way it should be. The ground should not be moving, but you might want that. Okay, now let's do the easy way. Once again, I'm going to grab flowers and make a new composition by dragging it down. And this time, I'm just going to click on Warp Stabilizer right here in Tracker. This is the AI is going to do all that work that we just did. So it's going to take a minute, it's analyzing it, and then it will do it for us. So let's just let it do its thing. It's finished, and sometimes this can take a while. The AI's got to do a lot of thinking. So let's hit play. That looks pretty good. The AI did a good job. Okay, so that's the basics of stabilizing motion and using Warp Stabilizer. Let's move on to something more fun. For this next one, we're going to grab giraffe and pull that down and make a new composition. And you can see the giraffe is moving across the Sahara. So we're going to go to the beginning, and this time we're going to grab track motion. And we have a little track point again. I'm going to use my space bar to move over and grab the track point. Now, when you're grabbing the track point, it's sometimes really easy to, it's okay, you can always hit Control Z for undo. but you have to be able to grab it in the right place. So you'll get used to it. You have to try it. It's kind of like driving. It works if you just track his entire face, because that's a lot of contrast between his head and the background. And we don't need too big of an area here. I'm going to go ahead and let it try and track this all the way across. Well, it took a while. That was a lot of work. Let me hit U, and you can see all of these little track points that it made. We have all this information, but what are we going to do with it? Go back over to your composition, right-click in the bottom, and say New Null Object. And a null object is exactly what you think it is. It's kind of nothing. You're not going to see it right now because I'm in the Layer menu. If I go back to Composition, that has composited the two together, you'll see there's this thing that's just there, and it's nothing. If you were to export this footage, you would not see anything. So if you were looking at the null, you might have lost, what happened to my tracker? That's okay. If you click back on giraffe, you will see it has popped back up. So you say motion source was giraffe. There it is. We want to go to tracker 1, and now all of this stuff is here. So it's asking us some questions here. We want to tell it, well, what do you want us to do with this? We're going to click Edit Target, and we're going to say, I want you to target this to the null. Say OK, and make sure to hit Apply. It's going to ask you this, do you want X and Y? Yes, we do. Okay, and what has it done? If I scrub back and forth, you can see it has attached that nothing all the way across there. So that's really cool. You might be thinking, wow, I could attach all kinds of things to that. Why am I going to attach a null? Why don't I just attach something else to that and have it walk across like a word? Well, there are many reasons. 1, I told you to use a null. 2, that's what everybody does. But here's why. I'm going to make sure nothing is selected, and I'm just going to draw a circle. Like say he's thinking about something. And instead of the null, I want to attach the circle. So I'm going to go back to giraffe, click on the giraffe, tracker 1, and go Edit Target, and this time I want it to go directly to the shape layer. And I'm going to hit Apply. Yes. So now you can see that's pretty cool. The thing is attached to him. But oh wait, I wanted it above his head. Okay, so we're going to pick that up and move it above his head. The problem here is, do you see what happened? It moved that one keyframe. Because look what happens when we go to that. Look at all those position keyframes. If we wanted to change the position of this, we would have to change every single keyframe. So, in fact, let's look at what I just did. It's going to be there, and then for that one keyframe, it's going to, oh, did you see it? It was like subliminal message. Okay, so that's not going to work. We don't attach objects to motion tracking, we use a null. So let's do the same thing, but using the null. I'm going to delete this shape layer, go back and put my null where it's supposed to be. Once again, go to giraffe, tracker 1, edit target, and we're going to make sure it's on null, hit OK, and apply. Now our null is back. I'm going to save my work, by the way. Now I'm going to draw a circle. When you draw a circle, make sure that nothing is selected. If something is selected, it will think you're drawing a mask. We don't want a mask, we want a shape. So I'm going to grab the ellipse tool. Now let me make sure this is back at the beginning. And I'm going to draw a cute little thing, and I want some little dots like it's coming out. There we go. So something kind of like that. He's thinking. And you can see within that shape layer, because I had the shape layer selected when I drew the other ellipses, it drew them all within this one shape, and that's fine. So now I want that shape to attach itself to the null. I need to use something called parent-child. So think about when you were a child and you needed to cross a big street, you would hold your mom or your dad's hand. That's what we're going to do. If you do not see the parent-child relationship here, the easiest way is to hover over the name of your composition, right-click, and you see columns. These are the columns that are not showing, so you can turn any of these things on. We need the parent and link, or parent and child. And here it is, parent plus link. You could click here and tell it, I want this shape layer to be parented to the null. That works. Or you can grab this little pick whip, which think of it as the hand that you were holding, and tell it, I want you to hold the hand of the null. Now, as it goes across, it's going to hold the hand. So let's see what happens. Spacebar. Very cool. So now what's good is, because I haven't made any keyframes to the shape layer at all, I can add keyframes and it's not going to affect anything. So for instance, if I want this to scale up, say I want it to finish at 100 and I want it to start at 0. Now it should, let's see if it does right. So let's add some more stuff to this. Let's type something fun. Okay, so I just typed something cool, and I want to tell that, please follow the null. Now, the problem with that is we need to have a transition or something, or we can have it start back after. Let's see, we could just move it so it's like this. So, yeah, let's add a transition. So let's actually do opacity. I'm going to click T for opacity because O does something else. And let's go ahead and turn that keyframe on to have it start at nothing, and the opacity will come up. So now we've got a pretty cool little thing. There we go. And just for fun, let's have it rotate some for no particular reason. Making a few keyframes. Once again, because we used a null, we can have these other things doing all kind of stuff and it's not going to affect the motion path itself. We don't want to have to keyframe it after we spent all of that time. The next one, we're going to make a composition with the one called Walking Vertical. And do notice that that's in 1080 by 1920. And if we make a composition, it's going to make it the perfect size for us. All right, so this one, I want to track this girl. But the problem is, she is moving forward. So we need to deal with scale. We can't, she's not moving straight across like the other thing. If we were to attach a thought bubble to her, it would get bigger as she gets closer to us. Now, of course, it's got a little bit of shake. If you want to stabilize this motion first, you can. I'm just going to go ahead and do the tracker. So we're going to click Track Motion. And this time, before we start doing anything, I want to say that I need to deal with scale and rotation. Notice that it has given us 2 track points. So we just need to give it 2 things so that it can see the parallax that's happening between these 2 different things. The best place on her is she's got really nice white teeth. So just choose her mouth, and that has worked well. The next thing we need to choose is somewhere else on her body so that it can see the relationship between these. I'm going to try this belt loop right here. Now realize if you start doing this and it gets lost, you've got to kind of go back and arrange things and try and do it again. So let me move this over. And once again, you don't want to give it too big of an area to sample. Let's go ahead and try this. If it gets lost, you need to come back over and click in Options and change some things and see if you can get it to do better. Okay, mine just got lost. Did you see? And so I stopped it. Let's back. Let's open up U so we can see. So you can see it lost what was happening somewhere around here. So I'm going to go back and it will reanalyze this. I'm going to give it a little bit more space to work with. And I'm going to tell it to enhance the before match. Let's see if that helps. Let's continue to analyze. Okay, it got a little lost at the end, but I think we're okay. You can see right there where the keyframe went off. In fact, we could even manually do that if you want. I have done that before. This is just a few keyframes. We could manage, but I don't think it's going to, well, this is not that many, so we could go through and fix it ourselves. Let's actually, I'm going to back up a little bit and see if we can do just one at a time. So that worked. I went back and fixed that one keyframe and then analyzed one at a time. Sometimes you really have to do that type of a thing. So at this point, I'm going to make a null. And I'm going to tell it edit target. I want it to be null. Hit OK. And make sure all three of these are on and hit apply. Okay, it has now attached that null, and you can see as it's getting closer, that box of that null is getting bigger. So let's try something simple like adding a word. I'm now going to parent this to the null. It's working. So do you see how the first time we did it, we wouldn't have been able to use that because we have to use scale and a little bit of rotation to make this actually work. So now let's add another tracker to this other girl. Make sure you've clicked on the walking vertical MPEG and go up and grab the pen tool. If you try and draw with the pen tool when you have something selected, it is going to make a mask, not a shape. So just draw a kind of rough shape around her with the pen tool. And you can see it has masked out the girl's face. Okay, what do we do with that? Over here in Tracker, you can see that we have some choices. I'm going to choose Face Tracking, Outline Only. You can choose a Detailed Face Tracker, which would track her eyes, her nose, her mouth. We're just going to do the outline right now. You can try that again on your next go-round. And go ahead and let it analyze. Okay, and if you go back to the composition, you will see that it has tracked her and it has created a mask with a whole bunch of keyframes. Now, it did get lost for a couple of keyframes. If you want to try and fix that, just go to your mask path and we can use the keyframe button. See, that one's messed up. It's just a few if you want to go through and fix it. And believe me, in some of these high-budget movies, they do have to go frame by frame fixing things. The computers can't think for themselves yet. So that looks great. Let's go ahead and throw an effect on that. So if we go to Effects and Presets, I'm actually going to turn her face black and white. So just type in black and white. In color, it's in color correction. I'm going to go ahead and throw that on her face, and you can see that her face has turned black and white. Well, that's great, but we lost the other girl and all that other work that we have done. Well, let's get it back. We're going to click on the walking vertical layer and say Control D, which will make a copy. So on the bottom copy, we're going to open up the effects and delete with the delete key, the black and white, and we're going to delete the mask. So now we have the one on the bottom does not have the mask. The one on the top does have a mask of just her face. If we turn the eyeball off, you can see there's just her face. And they're the same exact thing. So let's see what this looks like. Now, we could do better if we had drawn a better mask, but we can also kind of feather that. So let's see. Go into, that would be this top one, number 3. Go into masks, and you can see that you can feather the mask some. Now, don't feather it too much or it'll get rid of everything. I feathered mine about 30. That looks a little bit more natural, like it's actually makeup. I don't know why we did this to this pretty girl. So that's a pretty sophisticated little thing. You can see where you could do all kind of stuff with that. So that's the basics of warp stabilizer, stabilizing motion, and track motion. We will be doing the others in subsequent lessons, so have fun with this one.